When the federal officer showed me the arrest warrant, I turned off the bike, let go of the helmet, and smiled. "Let God's will be done," I told him. 12 years ago, I would have run. Today, I stood still. Before we continue, family, if you believe that anyone can change and that a new life is possible, subscribe right now and stay until the end, because this story, the story of a delivery man on a motorcycle who decided never to return to the shadows, will shake you. The smell of gasoline and freshly baked bread mixed with the warm afternoon air as I waited for change at the bakery, La Espiga de Oro. I had 3 urgent deliveries on the app and 2 off the books, a box of books for a teacher and a 3-tier cake I had been paid for in cash. The bike roared beneath me like a loyal dog hungry for the street. I had already done my check, brakes fine, lights fine, chain tight. The rear box, metal, tall, lined inside with rubber so the bags wouldn't slip, stuck out a little more than allowed. I knew it. The lid sat 2 fingers above the regulation limit. And yes, I admit it, I was carrying more weight than a reasonable delivery man would. But it wasn't a whim. It was the end of the month and I had to make rent. On the street, necessity always asks you for an extension. "Thanks, buddy," I told the baker when he handed me the 4 baguettes that went with the order. I placed them carefully in the box, wrapping them in thick napkins. I locked it, crossed the avenue, and entered the old Beltway, which at that hour is a lazy river of cars, vans, and bicycles. I accelerated gently through the gaps, eyes fixed on the mirrors. When I passed under the Antennas Bridge, I saw the checkpoint. 2 patrol cars from the local highway guard and a white truck with long antennas. Orange cones. Flashing lights. A big officer with a trimmed beard stared at me as if we already knew each other. He signaled me to pull over. And I did. I killed the engine, slowly removed my helmet, and raised my hands. I learned to do it that way, clear, direct, so there would be no misunderstandings. "Good afternoon, operator," said the officer in a thunderous voice. "Bike documents, insurance, and license." "Good afternoon, officer," I replied without hesitation, handing him everything. "Here it is." The name on his badge said, Varela. Beside him, a young officer, not even a beard yet, was carefully checking my rear box, the tires, the brake lights, the plate light. "Do you know why we stopped you?" Varela asked, flipping through my papers. "Yes, officer." "The box is higher than allowed and I'm overweight," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "I had to finish some deliveries. I should have checked better, I didn't." The young one, who I later learned was called Rios, hissed through his teeth. It wasn't normal for a delivery man to confess so quickly. Most argue, haggle, offer a little help. I know it well. I was that majority. "And do you understand this is a serious offense? It's dangerous for you and for others," Varela said. "The law allows me to impound the unit and present you for resistance if you don't cooperate." "I understand, officer. If it needs to be immobilized, immobilize it. If I need to go with you, I'll go." I didn't speak with irony. I didn't put on a face of, "Let's see if that's true." I just nodded. And then, when the silence stretched, I said what saved my life years ago, what reminds me every day that the past can bend without breaking. "Let God's will be done." Rios, who was sniffing around the box, came closer suddenly. "Are you kidding us?" "No, sir. I'm serious. I know I messed up. You're doing your job. I've chosen to do mine differently than I used to." Varela held my gaze. He had the eyes of someone who had already seen too many excuses on the roadside. But he also had that glimmer of someone who once believed in miracles. He didn't judge me, not yet. He asked me to open the box. I did. He saw the cake, the baguettes, a large thermos of soup that smelled of cilantro and lemon, and the books tied with twine. "What do you do for a living?" "Deliveries," I smiled. "Everything. Food, papers, medicine, hope when I bring it." The click of his radio was heard. An urgent call came through, a raspy, nervous voice. "All units in the North Circuit, attention. Robbery in progress against a platform delivery driver in Colonia Prado Oscuro. Armed with a knife and an old revolver. 2 on motorcycles, 1 on foot. Reported by 911. Varela and Rios looked at each other. I looked too. I know that neighborhood. Narrow streets, broken sidewalks, unlit poles. The bike creaked under my weight when I stood up automatically, as if an ancestral spring lifted me. 10 years ago, that alarm would have made me run in the opposite direction. 10 years ago, I was the one who set off those alarms. Full name, said Varela, as if drafting an invisible report. My name is Mauro Ortega, I replied. But on the street they call me Lynx. I didn't say it with pride. That nickname was born in filth. They gave it to me because I saw routes, gaps, hiding places where others saw nothing. Eyes of a lynx, they said. It served ugly purposes. Today I carry it like a scar I show to remember. Have you had problems with the law, Ortega? Varela didn't let me get comfortable. I took a deep breath. If I learned anything, it's that the truth disarms faster than any gun. Yes, officer. I was arrested in 2013 for aggravated robbery and carrying a weapon. I served 8 years. Since then, nothing. I'm clean. I don't carry weapons, I don't take shortcuts. Rios clenched his jaw. Varela requested verification over the radio. They gave my details, my CURP, my license. The radio spat static, then the voice from Central. Ortega, Mauro. Record, robbery with violence and carrying a weapon, released under conditions in 2021. Current status, no outstanding warrants, appearances fulfilled, reintegration evaluation positive. Copy, said Varela, and looked at me as if he was seeing at the same time who I was and who I am. And since when have you been so cooperative? Since God gave me a second chance. It wasn't overnight. There were blows, there was hunger, there was shame. But it changed. The radio buzzed again, this time louder. Reinforce Prado Oscuro. The attackers are moving toward Aguacero Alley. The victim, male, 22 years old, yellow shirt, black helmet. Ambulance requested. Yellow shirt, black helmet. In the apps that uniform is common. I pictured the look on that kid's face, because I had seen it 1,000 times in front of me when I did what I shouldn't, and I had it on me when I got what I deserved. A mix of disbelief and terror. Officer, I said, I know the alleys of Prado Oscuro. I can guide you through inside. There's a shortcut by the wall of a primary school. Then you cross an unlit yard and come out straight onto Aguacero. Varela frowned, weighing in his head that map only a few of us had walked. Are you asking to come with us? I'm offering what I have, knowledge. I don't want a reward. I want to do the right thing. Rios clicked his tongue. What if it's a trap? What if you lead us into a choke point? I could understand his distrust. If once I was a beast, how could he believe I was now a guard dog? I lowered my eyes for a second, not out of fear, but out of respect for what I was asking. When I raised them, I spoke with that voice that only comes when I remember my mother's hands on my first day of freedom. I will not return to the shadows by deceiving. Not anymore. If you'd rather I stay, I'll stay. If you need to arrest me for the tall box, do it. If you need a guide, I'm here. Let God's will be done. The air stayed tense. The smell of bread was no longer noticeable. 2 lanes over, cars kept living their lives. The afternoon began to turn orange. Varela made a decision that, I could see, he didn't make lightly. Rios, he said, without taking his eyes off me, get in the truck. Ortega, he came closer, if you come, you ride behind us, 2 bikes away, without getting between units. If you try to escape, you go straight to the public prosecutors for the box and for obstruction. Are we clear? We're clear, officer. I strapped on my helmet, tightened the chin strap, and prayed silently a prayer I learned from an old man who visited me so many times in my cell that I memorized his wrinkles. I squeezed the lever. The bike woke up. And we left. We took the service road of the old Beltway. Varela hit the short siren to ask for passage, and the traffic opened like a nervous curtain. I followed close, glued to the truck's wake, dodging old potholes that stared at me like black cones. We entered the neighborhood through Ferrocarril Avenue, where the pavement cracks in squares and dogs think they're traffic lights. At the wall of the Luz de Mayo primary school, Varela signaled me. I pointed with my head to the gap in the chain-link fence where I knew a patrol truck could fit if it went in sideways. They had patched it once, but it always got opened again. "Through here," I shouted without getting too close. Varela hesitated for a second. Rios got out with his holstered gun, checked the entrance, got back in. The truck slipped in like a big cat with a belly. I went in on foot with the bike off, pushing it so as not to draw attention. Inside, a yard with swings without chains, long shadows, and a garbage container that smelled of things you don't want to remember. At the back, the low wall that opened onto the corridor of the linear building. That's where the ones fleeing would jump. They always do. On the other side is the corridor that goes straight to Aguacero, I whispered. If the robbers know they're being closed in from the avenue, they cut through here. How do you know? Rios never missed a chance to doubt. Because I cut through too, I said, and it wasn't a metaphor. Noises. Fast steps. A whistle. A helmet rolling. Two shadows crossed the corridor like scared rats. Varela signaled to halt. Silence. Breathed together. The shadows stopped when they heard the distant siren. They peeked out. The light drew narrow shoulders. One carried someone else's backpack with the platform's logo. The other, a short tube that looked like an old revolver, the kind the city inherited when short memory became a business. Varela stepped forward with a trained voice. "Police. Drop what you're carrying and put your hands up." The shadows didn't raise anything. They bolted toward the wall. The one with the revolver didn't hesitate. He aimed at the truck and fired a shot that cracked like a sick firecracker. Rios ducked by instinct. Varela covered the side of the container. I, who don't carry weapons and never will, pressed myself against the bike and breathed. My temples pounded. They pounded with another music. "Cover the side," Varela shouted. The one with the backpack leapt onto the wall as if the concrete belonged to him. The one with the revolver tried to do the same, but his foot got caught on a wire. I saw it, I smelled it. It was the kind of clumsiness that betrays you when you weren't born a thief, when you just crashed into need. A memory flashed, me, in another yard, shoe stuck, a guard shouting, my hands covered in blood that wasn't mine. I closed my eyes for a second. Opened them with resolve. Through the ramp. I pointed to a side drainage outlet that climbed the wall more easily. There. Varela ran toward the ramp. Rios covered the exit. I moved forward with the bike off, set it against the wall, and approached with my palms raised. "Calm down. Nobody wants this to end badly," I shouted. "Drop the backpack, brother. It's not worth it." The one with the revolver looked at me with wide eyes. For an instant, I saw in him the kid I used to be. He saw my helmet in my arm, the patched jacket, the tall box. He read in me something he didn't read in the uniforms. Past. He hesitated. That hesitation was the bridge. "Brother," I told him calmly. "I also once ran with that in my hand. It won't open any doors for you. It'll only close them all. Drop it and I give you my word nothing else will be fired." He blinked. Lowered the weapon a centimeter. The other one, already on the other side of the wall, shouted an insult and reached out his hand. The city is like that. It pulls you down when you're about to climb up. The kid with the revolver took a deep breath. The wall was too high for him. He looked at the truck, looked at my bike, looked at me. Rios' voice cracked behind us. "Stop. Hands up." The revolver came up again, as if it weighed tons. "No," I said. "Don't do that." The bullet didn't come out. The drum rattled like an empty rattle. It was old, improvised. Varela came in from the side with a speed I hadn't seen in him. In 2 strong steps, he pinned him from behind, grabbed his wrist, took him down without unnecessary blows, secured the weapon with a sharp twist. Rios covered the wall line. The one with the stolen backpack disappeared across rooftops. "Central, we have one secured, weapon confiscated." Varela called in. I stayed still, breath caught in my throat. The kid on the ground was crying, not from pain, but from fear. He was maybe 19, at most. The same age I thought the world owed me everything. I felt the urge to put a hand on his shoulder. But I didn't. I didn't want to interfere with the procedure. What I did do was look at Varela, silently asking, "Can I talk?" "Tell him," he said with a nod. I crouched just close enough for my voice to reach him without touching him. "Brother, whatever they call you," I murmured, "I've been there. You are not your worst day. You are not your worst decision. If you choose, you can get out. If you choose, you can come back different." The kid closed his eyes as if he wanted to sleep and wake up in another reality. The reinforcement sirens entered through the school access like blue flies. The yard filled with metallic sounds and radios. The ambulance, the one they had called for the assaulted delivery driver, still hadn't arrived. Varela raised his eyes to me. "Where did they leave him?" he asked. "If they tried to cut through here, the victim must be lying 2 streets over, on Aguacero," I said. "There's a little garden next to a pole without a lamp. They always stash what gets in their way there. Rios, with me. Ortega, behind, at a distance." We left the yard through the corridor. The smell of cheap talc and instant soup clung to my nose. When we reached the alley, I saw him. A black helmet rolled against the curb, a torn backpack, a puddle of soup mixed with thin blood. The delivery driver in a yellow shirt was leaning against the wall, breathing with eyes wide open. He had a gash on his left arm. "Easy, brother," I told him, leaving the bike in neutral. "The worst is over now. They took my phone. He stammered. I told them I didn't have cash. Varela called the ambulance with coordinates. Rios pulled a tourniquet from his vest and handed it to me without looking, as if his hand had learned to trust before his head did. I placed it above the wound, careful not to tighten too much, stopped the bleeding, covered it with a clean t-shirt I always carry in case the rain surprises me. The kid looked at me like you look at a lighthouse when you're dizzy. "Thanks, really," he whispered. "You're welcome. You're one of mine." The ambulance arrived. They took him away with the siren on pause, only lights, as if they didn't want to scare the neighborhood. Varela asked me for the evidence box. The old revolver, rusty, with the butt wrapped in cloth tape, a knife, the snatched backpack with food remains. They took my statement right there, on the hot seat of the bike. When they finished, Varela exhaled deeply. He gave me the same look as at the beginning. It wasn't identical anymore. "Ortega," he said, "the tall box and the overweight don't get erased because you helped." "I know," I replied. "I'm going to issue the fine and immobilize the bike here for a few hours. Or you can come with us to the station, do your paperwork, and I'll buy you a coffee." In his mouth, that "do your paperwork" was a "I need to understand better." "Let's go," I said. Rios lowered his chin, as if he didn't want to give in, but there was something in his eyes other than suspicion. Maybe reluctant respect. We got in the truck. I left the bike locked and asked one of the neighbors to please keep an eye on it. He said yes, that he also delivered tacos at night and that if I was a friend of the police then I was a friend of anyone. The Sector North Guard station smelled of reheated coffee, damp paper, and old metal. They sat me on a chair intact from so many stories. I told mine. Varela ordered 2 cups of coffee while Rios checked my record again, as if he could find a crack there to believe less. I told it plain, how at 14 I started as a lookout in the market, how at 17 I got on the wrong bike, how at 20 I was already links for worse things. I didn't mention streets, or names, or other nicknames. Not out of fear, out of ethics. Some stories are better told only inside. "And what changed?" Varela asked, without hardness, without gloves. I drank the coffee with hands that didn't shake. A man came into my cell with a Bible and not with a sermon. He didn't talk to me about fire, he talked about bread. He didn't say, "You deserve this." He asked me if I wanted to rest. He visited when not even my people came. One day he told me, "God loves you as you are, but too much to leave you the same." I thought it was a slogan. Then I saw him cleaning me inside, little by little. I stopped biting to chew. I learned to ask for forgiveness. And when I got out, someone lent me a bike. I started delivering bread for a bakery that treated me like a person. The rest was pedal and plain road. I fell sometimes. I got up others. Rios leaned on the desk. A lot of people say that when they need something from the police. I don't need anything, I said. I can pay the fine. I already lost deliveries. If today I end up without money for gas, then it's beans without gas. But I won't lie. Or run. Varela nodded, his eyes fixed on my hands. Scars tell without asking permission. On my left palm, a crooked line runs across to my thumb. I got it jumping a metal fence 1,000 lives ago. He knew how to read it. I stopped you for an administrative violation. I found a person who prevented a broken weapon from becoming a tragedy. Both things are true, he said. I can't give you a medal. I can give you a chance to fix the box and show you the regulations. And I can ask you for something in return. Whatever you say, I replied. We want to organize a talk for delivery drivers in the sector. Assaults against you have increased. There are things you know, routes, blind spots, dead hours, that don't show up on maps. We can reinforce, you can prevent. If you're willing to speak to others like you, not from morality but from the street, we'll achieve more together. I stayed quiet for a long second. Not from doubt. From weight. Because talking about what I was is always opening a box that, if you don't close it carefully, bites you. I'm willing, I said. But I want to talk to them about how not to lose peace when everything screams the opposite. Hardly anyone talks about that. Varela smiled with half his mouth. Rios exhaled as if he hadn't realized he was holding his breath. Done, said Varela. I'll give you your bike back as soon as you regularize the box. I'll go with a verifier so they don't bleed you. You'll pay what's fair. Oh, and one more thing, Ortega. Yes. Don't lose that phrase. It's not common. Let God's will be done. It sounds like surrender, but it smells like courage of the good kind. Night fell early, or that's how it felt when I left the station. They handed me a ticket for the fine, a list of authorized workshops to cut the box, and an informal invitation to come back tomorrow to start coordinating the talk. I walked to the corner where a man was selling spiced pot coffee. I ordered one. He gave it to me in a foam cup with a soft lid. I blew on it. It tasted of clove and of the past. It tasted of life. Out of nowhere, at the edge of the sidewalk, my backup phone rang, the cheap chip one I carry in case the main one goes down. It was an unknown number. I answered with alert ears, the kind that never lose old habits even when you learn new ones. Mauro, a woman's voice said. Yes. Who is this? I'm Mireia. From La Espiga de Oro. The cake never got delivered. The client is furious. Says he's going to post everything on social media, that he'll report you, that you're irresponsible. I closed my eyes. The cake. In the yard. Among sirens, weapons, blood, and radios, the cake. I saw it like a white moon waiting for life to give it permission to celebrate. If only everything in life were as simple as delivering a cake on time. But it isn't. Mireia, forgive me. There was an operation. I accompanied the authorities. There was a robbery. I can't move the bike until I cut the box. Give me 20 minutes and I'll call you with a solution. 20 minutes, Mauro, she said with a voice trying to sound firm over the edge of sorrow. Please. I hung up and saw the neon reflection in the station window. On my face were all my years, the old and the new. I thought quickly. If I called a taxi, the cake would arrive battered. If I asked a buddy for a little bike, maybe. But I didn't have enough cash left, not even for loan shark rates. I clenched my teeth. I went to Varela's truck, which they were already parking. Officer, I said, I know this isn't your responsibility. I know it's not your job. But I have a huge cake I must deliver. If it doesn't arrive, a bakery that trusted an ex-convict will take a hit on social media that it might not survive. Any idea? Varela looked at me with a mix of, this can't be, and, of course life is like this. Rios rolled his eyes, but not mockingly, defeated complicity. "We can't transport civilian goods in the unit," Varela said. "But I can call a friend who has a van and should be nearby. If he agrees, you pay for the gas and I'll go with you to deliver it. The paperwork can wait half an hour. Do you accept?" "I accept," I said quickly, like taking a breath before diving. 5 minutes later, a white van arrived with the logo of a signage company. Varela's friend was named Bruno, ink-stained hands, Dawn smile. The three of us loaded the cake with surgical care. On the way, I confirmed the address, gave the fake name of the client. Don't use real names, Morrow, remember, and breathe to think about what I would say when someone who had already written 20 insults in his head opened the door. We arrived at a modern building, glass and concrete, doorman at reception. We went up by elevator as if carrying a cream bomb. We knocked. A man in a white shirt and hard expression opened. Behind him, metallic balloons waiting. A little girl with a plastic crown and wet eyes. That's what the cake was for. For her. That's when my armor cracked a little. "Sir," I began, "we arrived late. There is no excuse that can give you back the minute you were waiting. Only facts. There was a robbery of a delivery driver, I collaborated with the authorities, and my bike was impounded for a while. But here is your cake, whole. And here I am, offering an apology and a refund of my commission in cash, even if it leaves me with nothing today. You decide." The girl looked at the cake like you look at a dream that limps back. The man breathed through his nose, hard. He studied the three of us, me with a worn jacket, Bruno with ink-stained hands, Varela in civilian clothes over his usual stance. His face softened a little. "Come in," he said. "There's no time for quarrels anymore. Today I'm in charge, tomorrow it'll be social media. Today my daughter rules." We went in. Setting the cake on the table was like lowering a piano from the 3rd floor without ropes. We did it. The girl clapped softly. I stuck back with spit a decoration that had come loose. The man nodded. I held out the money from my commission. He looked at it and shook his head. "Keep it. I don't want to be the one who takes away your dinner." I bit back a thank you, because sometimes saying thanks sounds too small in the face of mercy. We left. Bruno went off with a farewell that makes friends without names. Varela touched my arm. "Tomorrow at 10, Sector North. And," he said, "for today, thank you." "Let God's will be done," I replied. That night I walked home. Without a bike. With the ticket in my pocket. With legs tired as if they had pedaled to the moon. In the building where I rent, my usual neighbors, the ones who greet you more with their heads than their mouths, were watching the news on an old TV, the volume loud so life could be heard in community. On the screen came a brief note: "Police detain suspected assailant of delivery driver, accomplice on the run." No one mentioned my name. They had no reason to. I wasn't there to be on TV. I was there not to be back in the infamous headlines. I went to bed with my stomach growling in protest. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't need to. I closed my eyes. And then the past, which never tires, knocked at the door of my dreams like a polite debt collector. I saw the damp walls of my cell. I saw the face of a man who came in with a Bible and with bread. I saw my first delivery in freedom, nervous as if I were carrying dynamite. I saw an officer looking at me as if he wanted to believe. And I fell asleep with a phrase on my lips that has saved me from myself. Let God's will be done. The next morning the doorbell woke me. Too early to be the bread man, too late to be the trash. I opened half-eyed. It was a messenger on a bike. He gave me an envelope with no sender. Inside, a sheet with an address and a time, Sector North, 10 o'clock. And a second note, in neat, unfamiliar handwriting: "Sometimes the past comes back, Morrow. But there are ways to receive it." I didn't recognize the handwriting. I recognized the message. I made my bed carefully, the way they taught me in prison to start with dignity. I showered, put on my clean jacket. Before leaving, I ran my hand over the photo of my mother taped to the mirror. She looked at me with her short smile, as if she could see for me the potholes I wouldn't see. I went down the stairs 2 at a time. In the street, the morning air smelled of detergent and basket tacos. I walked to the authorized workshop to cut the box. The owner, a man with thick eyebrows named Don Jacinto, received me with the look of someone who has seen it all and is no longer impressed, but still moved by what's right. "I'll leave it exactly by the regulations," he said, tapping the sheet metal with his knuckles. "Quick, solid, no cheating you. I saw the news last night. I know who you're talking about. It's hard, but it can be done. Thank you, Don Jacinto." While I waited, I sat on a chair and looked at the mural his nephews had painted on the wall, a bike crossing a city of bread and fruits. It made me think. It made me remember that dignity also gets bolted down with time. My phone rang. It was the station's number. "Ortega, Varela. A report came in for you. The bakery La Espiga de Oro called to say thank you. And another thing, the kid injured yesterday asked for your name. Says he wants to give you back a soup with cilantro and lemon," he laughed. "Stop by after the talk if you can." "I'll be there, officer." I hung up. Don Jacinto winked at me. "See? He's going to invite you for soup. That's better than a medal." We laughed. It was a small laugh, but it rang like a bell that scares off blackbirds. The box turned out perfect. The top lowered 1.5 centimeters. Clean weld. We did the paperwork. I paid. It hurt my pocket, it rested my conscience. I headed to Sector North with my helmet on tight and my mind in order. When I arrived, in the backyard of the station there were 10 delivery drivers with vests of different colors. One had a backpack full of stickers, another a leather jacket with studs. I saw them and saw myself. Not like a mirror, like a fractal. Varela was up front. Rios beside him, with a notebook. "Ortega," Varela announced. "Today you don't come as a detainee or as a witness. You come as someone who can speak truths we don't know. This space is yours for 15 minutes. Speak without fear." I cleared my throat. Looked at my hands. Those hands that once gripped things I shouldn't name and that today hold bread and books. Looked at the helmets on the ground, shining like a plastic half-moon. "Brothers," I began, "I didn't come to give you a class. I came to share the street with you and to tell you 2 or 3 tricks to not lose your life or your peace. First, routes. No shortcut is worth a life. If you're going to cut through an alley, make sure the exit is wide, that there aren't gates that trap you in a funnel. Second, schedules. From 6:20 to 7:10, and from 9:30 to 10:15, those are the peaks when those who take look for those who deliver. If your app sends you to a zone where yesterday there was a report, don't go alone, tell your group, ask them to change the order. Third, signs. A loose dog where there wasn't before, a light off that was on yesterday, a neighbor looking the other way. The street speaks. Don't silence it with headphones blasting. Varela nodded. Rios took frantic notes. The delivery drivers listened. In their eyes there were guards. And a question. "And if they've already caught you?" One blurted out, young, with an hourglass tattoo on his neck. "Ask for help. Shout the name of someone from the neighborhood." Sounds absurd, but saying, "Don Yo," makes 2 windows open and the one robbing you knows he's being watched. Don't fight for the phone. Fight for your life. And if you feel rage swallowing you after, find someone. Don't swallow it alone. Rage spins tops in the soul. There was silence. One of the most serious raised his hand. "How did you manage not to hate them?" he asked, pointing at Varela and Rios. "I still crack inside when they stop me." I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to give them a fable. I owed them a truth. I decided to believe that there is authority that wants to do its job well. And I did my part, not lying, not running, not buying shortcuts. It helps me to say out loud, "Let God's will be done," not because it takes away responsibility, but because it lowers my pulse and raises my light. A loud ring interrupted. Central called. Varela listened. His expression changed. He looked at me, nodded silently, as if to say, "Your turn for the next round." "Report," he announced. Two individuals assaulting delivery drivers in the Rivera Honda neighborhood. One in a red jacket, the other with a blue helmet. Riding a black motorcycle with no plates. The pattern repeats. I felt a tingling on my neck. Rivera Honda was territory with memory. Years ago, I better tell that later. Varela looked at me. Ortega, he said, if you come with us. You can stay too. No one's forcing you. I looked at my hands, looked at the freshly cut box, looked at the helmet. I remembered the note, sometimes the past comes back, Morrow. But there are ways to receive it. I nodded. I'm going. We went out like the afternoon before, but this time we weren't strangers. We were a half-learned team. While the truck roared toward Rivera Honda, my phone vibrated. A message without name, without photo, don't get involved again. There are debts that aren't yours. I swallowed hard. Rios looked at me through the mirror. Everything okay? Yes. It's the past knocking at the door. Do we open it? Varela asked, half joking, half at war. Carefully, I replied. Always carefully. And so, with the siren cutting the air and the heart pounding like a piston, we entered the neighborhood where I had learned to run, ready to learn to stay. When we turned into Rivera Honda, I knew we weren't just chasing two thieves. We were heading straight for the alley where I, years ago, learned to run faster than my conscience. If this story is pulling you in and you want to know how a delivery driver on a bike can face his past without losing peace, subscribe right now and stay until the end. What's coming will tighten your chest. Varela's truck entered Rivera Honda with lights on, the siren short, like a warning without stirring up too much. At that hour, the sun hit flush against the tin roofs and the shadows became perfect hiding spots. I rode two bikes behind, as agreed, with my arms relaxed but my eyes sharp. I know that neighborhood like someone who read the map with his hands. The cracks in the sidewalk, the store that gives credit until Tuesday, the shop where kids learn to sand rims, the neighbor who sweeps the street even if it's dirt. There, time walks barefoot. Central spoke over the radio. The aggressors, red jacket and blue helmet, had left the main avenue to go into Garza Alley. Bad sign. Garza ends in a triangle of passageways that don't appear on any map, the triangle of silences. If they take you there, they cut off your way out like closing scissors on you. I myself once drew it with chalk on a sidewalk, explaining to a rookie where to escape. Swallowing that memory scraped my tongue. Garza turns into a knife, I warned with signals. On the right is the water tank passage, on the left the chapel yard. If they want to make us lose, they'll send us to the tank. If they want to escape, they'll throw themselves through the chapel. Varela understood without words. He turned left. Rios leaned half his body out the window, alert to any metallic glint that wasn't a pot. I kept my distance. The tires chewed stones. A dog barked with the craft of a neighborhood alarm. Two kids stopped kicking a bottle. My helmet reflected a fleeting silhouette, black motorcycle without plates, torn seat, two riders. Red jacket on the back, blue helmet in front. I saw them, they saw me. Heads up. I shouted. The black bike turned toward the chapel yard as if they had rehearsed it. And maybe they had. It was the old route. I managed to see them jumping a broken step. One turned and pointed at me with his empty hand as if it were a gun. A gesture learned on 1,000 corners. My old impulse wanted to burst out. Shift to second, stick to them, cut them off with the box. But my new version held the handlebars and breathed. Don't compete, don't provoke, guide. On the side of the chapel there's an exit to Tull Alley, I told Varela, tracing an L in the air with my finger. If we cut them off through Tull, they'll hit the broken fence of the workshop and that's where the rabbits end. We're going in through Tull, Varela said over the radio. Rios, keep an eye on the yard. The truck pushed through Tull like it had a cat's memory. I kept parallel on a narrow path, cement cones and a rope with clothes hanging. In the chapel yard, the squeal of a tire sliding on fine gravel was heard. Then, the thud of a foot against sheet metal. Then, silence. A silence that wasn't empty, but waiting. I don't like it, murmured Varela. Smells like a trap. It is a trap, I said, but not for you. For me. I felt it before I saw it. That knot in the throat, that smell of cheap cigarette mixed with gasoline. An echo of laughter, crooked, familiar. I turned right and saw him where I didn't want to. Leaning in the shadow of the workshop's broken fence, red jacket on his arm and blue helmet hanging from 2 fingers. Skinny like an old spring, scraggly beard, eyes of a dog that learned to bite to survive. A second was enough for me to name him. Or rather, for him to throw the name at me. "What's up, Lince?" he said, voice with that neighborhood cadence that brings back childhood and sin in the same gulp. "You deliver peace now too?" The world shoved me back in time. I saw him at 16, me at 20, both on a rooftop counting the steps to the neighbor's wall, calculating how many tiles could hold 2 bodies running. He was Rayon. Nobody called him by his full name, or maybe I never knew it. He was the kid who looked at me as if I were a manual of answers. And I, idiot, sometimes gave them to him. I thought him far away, misfiled by life. But life has a cruel warehouse. "They don't call me that anymore," I replied. "Now I deliver bread, books, soups, and when I can, hope." "What a pretty speech," he spat on the ground. "And how much hope do they pay you per hour?" His buddy, the one on the black motorcycle, appeared from behind with his helmet on and chin held high. The engine coughed, but it was still ready. He pointed the handlebars at me as if it were a spear. "That's not Lince," he said. "That's a preacher with a helmet." Varela got out of the truck in silence, the way night falls when it no longer wants to announce itself. Rios covered the flank. They didn't make a fuss. That kind of people know that any extra noise is too much. "Drop what you have and raise your hands," Varela ordered. "Nobody wants tragedies." Rayon laughed with his lips pressed together. "Nobody wants tragedies," says the man. "And do you think tragedy asks first? Tragedy comes on its own, officer." I saw no weapons in sight. But with Rayon, you never know. He hid knives in absurd places. The cuff of his sleeve, his pants near the ankle, the lining of his jacket. That knowledge weighed on me. Because knowing how the other fights when you're the one who taught him burns worse. "Let them go," memory whispered to me. But the present held my jaw. We didn't take a step. It was the shadow that moved for us. To my right, at the edge of the yard, another delivery driver appeared. We hadn't seen him. He wore a matte orange helmet, no visor, and the tight face of someone tired of being afraid. In his hands, a box with plastic bags dripping broth, and his forearm wrapped with a healed bandage. He was the kid in the yellow shirt from the day before. I knew it by the clumsy way he carried the box, by the bandage, by the eyes that had already looked at me from the ground. He shouldn't have been working. But hunger rules. "You again," the black bike guy growled. "Don't you ever learn?" They snatched his phone with a dirty magic tug. The kid tried to grab it back. Bad idea. The box tilted, the broth spilled, the floor turned to oil. He slipped. Rayon moved his hand. I didn't see it fully, but I saw the intent. Small knife, broken scissors, something that cuts dignity. My body wanted to launch. My old years too. But the new man tied me with an invisible rope. "Don't arrive smashing, arrive protecting." "Back!" Varela shouted. Hands visible. The black bike guy tried to mount to escape. The tire skidded on the broth. The engine roared in vain. That second of clumsiness was the whole window. Rios crossed with a long stride and planted himself between the kid and the bike, weapon holstered, palms open like a wall. Varela faced Rayon with the stance of an anchor. I sought the kid's eyes. "Easy, brother. Breathe with me," I said. 1, 2. Rayon measured me with that look that learns to count bones. And then, whether it was an insult to fate or a test of character, a sharp whistle sounded from the workshop rooftop. A third, who no one had seen arrive, leaned out his arm with rubble. Not a weapon. A piece of brick full of resentment. It flew toward Varela. Time slowed. I managed to push Varela aside. The brick hit me in the shoulder and erased my arm for an instant. The pain was clean, honest, the kind that tells you, you're still alive. Rooftop, shouted Rios, glancing upward for a second. That second was enough for the guy on the black bike to find traction. He accelerated toward the workshop exit. Rayon followed. The bike passed 1/2 meter from me. The heat of the engine licked my shin. I wanted to grab the handlebars like in the old days. Wanted to and didn't want to. I choose not to. I choose something else. I threw myself not at the bike, but at the post holding the clothesline. With a yank, I pulled down the rope that crossed the alley, and the clothes, sheets, shirts, pajama pants with ducks, fell like a curtain cut loose. The bike crashed against the damp fabric. It didn't stop it, but it threw it off balance. It bounced against a cement planter. The passenger, Rayon, fell sideways, hard thud, air gone. The driver kept going on 2 wheels by sheer miracle and disappeared among shouts and trash bins. Rios ran to the spot where Rayon had fallen. Varela covered me by instinct. Rayon, on the ground, smiled with half his mouth. He didn't reach for a knife. He sought my eyes. "Now you do preach, Lintz," he muttered. "But you still know where to cut." "I learned to cut differently," I replied. "I cut the ropes that tie me to the past." "How poetic," he coughed. "Did they teach you that in the soup Bible?" I didn't answer. My shoulder hurt. The laughter of years hurt. Varela secured his hands behind his back with the zip ties Rios carried. No excess, no added blows. A clean procedure, like a surgeon tired of emergencies. "Rayon," I said his war name, and he knew I recognized him. "This can end better than you think. Drop the names, drop the rage. You are not your worst minute." "Shut up," he spat. "If you say my real name, they'll disappear me. If you don't say it, the debt eats me. You always lose." "Not always," I said. "I'm here." He stayed silent, and for the first time I saw a child's wrinkle on his forehead, a trace of buried tenderness. A neighbor shouted from her door, "Enough already!" Another neighbor leaned halfway out to watch. The neighborhood, that jury without robes, began to come out of their houses. We didn't want a show. Varela called Central. We asked for backup. Minutes later, reinforcements arrived and took Rayon away. Rios picked up the delivery boy's phone, wet with broth and street. He returned it. The kid hugged it like recovering a photo. He looked at me, with the old bandage showing, the scratched helmet, the freshly hit shoulder. "Why do you do this?" he asked softly. "You already served your time, right? You could have left." I didn't think of a pretty answer. I said the one that kept me standing. Because if I leave when it shakes, I go back to being the same man as before. And I'm not that man anymore. I stay and shake here. Less comfortable, more alive. The neighborhood sounded like a neighborhood again. A cumbia played from some window, as if the speakers understood that life demands its space even in the middle of operations. Varela came closer, checked my shoulder with his eyes. "We're taking you to get it checked," he ordered. He didn't ask. "I'm fine," I lied a little. "I can move it." "Movement isn't the same as health," he replied. "And another thing." The driver fled toward the canal side. "There are 2 exits, the old bridge and the factory ramp. If he knows the area, he'll return through the bridge. If he improvises, he'll take the ramp, and that's where we can cut him off. What do you say?" I closed my eyes for a second and saw the map as if I had drawn it with light. The driver was clumsy but not stupid. He had found traction on soap. That takes a steady hand. If I were him, I'd avoid the bridge because there are eyes there, vendors, dogs, people. I'd take the ramp, which looks like an exit but is really a long neck. "Ramp," I said. "And at the base, a crack. That's where the nervous ones always fall." "Let's go," Varela said. The kid in the yellow shirt stopped me with his eyes. "Can I?" he asked, lifting the ruined box, the useless bags. "The soup is gone. I owe you one," I told him. "I'll see you later where we met last time." He smiled with shame. I felt old and young, guilty and innocent, all at once. I got on the bike. My shoulder screamed like a tire without air, but it moved. We followed the trail along the canal corridor. At the corner of the hardware store, a tire mark on the ground in a strange arc told us we were on track. Further ahead, a broken sandal in the middle of the street, and nobody walks with one sandal. The black bike had passed through. The ramp appeared with its mouth open, a promise of a quick exit. Varela lowered the siren. Rios leaned against the window. I hugged the edge, ready for whatever. And there it was, the black bike at the base, tilted. The driver trying to lift it without strength. Helmet on. Engine drowned. Surrounded by a silence almost comical. He took 2 steps, slipped, cursed. When he saw us, he feigned running. Varela aimed with his voice. Stop. Hands up. The driver hesitated, looked at the canal, measured height and life. He dropped his shoulders. Raised his hands. Let them tie him without drama. When they removed his helmet, we found a face with little sun and a lot of cigarettes. I didn't know him. He was my age from 10 years ago. He looked at me like looking at a sad mirror. And now what? He asked with chipped sarcasm. Now the hard part begins, I said. Answering for what you did and deciding what you'll do when you get out. And who are you to tell me that? He scoffed. One who already told it to himself, I replied. The rest was procedure, reading rights, securing the bike, notifying Central, writing in a notebook. I hated notebooks for many years. Now it calms me to see them filling emptiness with ink. The neighborhood watched us from afar, as if we could spread calm. On the way back to the station, with the detainees separated and the bike secured, Varela kept a silence that was a conversation without words. Finally, he said, I don't know how to explain this in a report, Ortega. A delivery driver suggested cutting down a clothesline to prevent an escape. Do you know the face the commander will make? Write that you applied resources from the environment. I smiled. It's true. Rios, who still kept his skepticism like someone saves the last cigarette just in case, came closer with a half-smile that already looked more like a full smile. Good move, preacher with a helmet, he said. Though you're going to get scolded by the neighbor for knocking down her laundry. I'll buy her new clothespins, I replied. And I'll bring her bread. The afternoon stretched into paperwork. I drank water, beat the pain with slow breathing, answered questions. When at last we were silent, Varela rested his elbows and clasped his hands as if he were about to pray without realizing it. Today the past knocked on your door, didn't it? Yes, I said. And I didn't deny it. I looked it in the eyes. Who was it? Someone who learned to run with me. And who now needs to learn to stay. That doesn't depend on you, warned Rios, realistic. I know. But if I can be living proof that it's possible, then my debt with the neighborhood is paid in installments, not with interest. Varela nodded. Rios put away his notebook. Night fell like a slow curtain. They returned my bike, now with the within regulations box validated. At the door, a man was waiting for me, sitting on an old yellow bike without stickers. It was the delivery boy in the yellow shirt. Now he wore a gray hoodie and a shy smile. In his hand, a thermos. You said you owed me a soup, he said. Well, I owed you a soup too. It smelled of cilantro, lemon, chicken, and hope. Strange how hope always smells like a kitchen. Thank you, brother, I said. What's your name? They call me Lalo, he answered. And no, it's not my real name. But sometimes nicknames are earned too. Nice to meet you, Lalo. I sat on the little station steps, sipped carefully. The warmth spread to my injured shoulder, as if convincing it that not all pain is an enemy. Varela watched us from inside and shook his head, amused. The talks continue tomorrow, he reminded me. And I want you to tell what happened today. With discretion. But there are things others need to hear. I will, I promised. Lalo stayed quiet for a while, watching the street like someone surveying the world. I want to speak too, he said at last. I don't know maps like you, but I know what it is to tremble and keep writing. Then speak, I smiled. Here no one asks for titles, just truth. Night already owned the rooftops when I started my bike to leave. Lalo said goodbye with a light tap on my helmet. Rios raised his hand like someone not yet used to saying, "Take care," but wanting to. Varela gave me that look that mixes respect with constant evaluation. I rode out to the avenue with my heart wrapped in soup steam. I passed in front of the chapel, which at that hour sounds like muted cans, and thought of Rayon, of his child's wrinkle, of the possibility that one day he'll sit where I sit and say, "Enough." At the traffic light, my phone vibrated. A new message, now with a blurry photo, a silhouette on a rooftop, the tin hat, the same angle from where the brick had come. The text said, "It's not over. We see you." It wasn't a movie threat. It was a reminder that the street doesn't applaud endings. The street demands a second act. I clenched my fist, not in rage, in decision. Faith isn't cowardly. It's brave in a different way. I looked at the sky, which in this city is a broken rectangle between cables. And I repeated softly, so my gut, my fear, the neighborhood, and the past that insists on sleeping in my living room would hear. Let God's will be done. The next day, first thing in the morning, I had another delivery and another talk. And a plan I hadn't wanted to admit until that night, to knock again on the door of someone to whom I owe a longer truth. His name isn't Rayon. He has a first and last name. He has a mother and a photo from when he was a kid with a red tricycle. If I say his name, I start a war. If I don't, I keep the thorn stuck. There's another way. One that doesn't destroy, doesn't betray, doesn't lie. One that asks permission at one window and offers work at another. You'll see. The third day dawned with a clear sky, as if the city had decided to give me a truce. At the station, Varela, Rios, and 10 new delivery drivers were waiting for me. Among them, Lalo, now without the bandage on his arm, with his patched-up backpack and the shy smile of someone who wants to start over. I spoke to them about maps, about signs and fear, but also about faith. I told them that you never stop trembling. You only learn to tremble in peace. That the bike is a tool, but life is the journey. And that if one day you think there's no way out, remember there's always a "let God's will be done" to start again. When I finished, there was silence. Not of doubt, but of respect. The silence that means, this helps us. Varela came up to me, shook my hand firmly, and said, "Ortega, you're not a cop, you're not a temple preacher. You're something rarer, a delivery man who decided not to run anymore. And that matters." Rios, for the first time, smiled at me without sarcasm. And if one day I feel like soup with cilantro and lemon, I already know who to look for. We laughed. Lalo patted me on the back. In that instant, I understood that the debt with the neighborhood is paid little by little, with testimonies, with truth, with firm steps instead of sprints. As I left, I got on the bike. Checked mirrors, adjusted helmet, started the engine. The vibration ran through me like a reminder. I'm still here. In the rearview mirror, I saw Varela raising his hand, Rios writing in his notebook, Lalo adjusting his backpack. 3 different worlds, united by the same road. The phone vibrated in my pocket. Another unsigned message. "It's not over. We see you." I read it, smiled, looked at the sky, the traffic, the neighborhood. And I answered softly, without fear, certain that I'm no longer the man who ran nor the one who attacked. I am Morrow, the delivery driver on a bike. Let God's will be done. And I accelerated toward the next delivery, which was no longer just a package, but the daily proof that peace, too, can be delivered.